consolidated statement at page 23. Then, page 24 is a confirmation that that Gubis did perform the services in those reflected in those invoices, and that is from a JT Seleka in your department.
That's correct.
And it's signed Deputy Director, Budget Control and Procurement Management Services. On page 25 and 26, there is an email chain dealing with the complaints by Gubis and the failure of the city as of, I think the email chain ends in, the email chain, the substantive content of the email chain ends February 26. So as of February 26, this was Gubis's complaint about non-payment. There's a statement attached at page 27, along with the invoices running that we've already seen, running from page 28 to page 34. Then, on page 35, you have a screenshot taken off the city's webpage, which identifies the is it the pending tenders that are being advertised?
Yes, it's as is I attached the website where tender bid register is, and the screenshot.
It's the bid register. It's the website where you can find the bid register for any tender.
Yes.
I see. And on the following page, it's the same website, but the tab that would be relevant is tender bid register. So if you click on one of those tenders, you'll get this screen.
Yes.
If you click on tender bid register, you'll get the register.
Yes.
Then on from page 37 to page 64, you attach a copy of a bid committee submission in another completely independent tender that the subject matter of the tender is not relevant to our proceedings. As I understand it,
it's not relevant. Just wanted to demonstrate what is the bid committee document, the BEC report. How is it?
What a BEC report looks like, and as I understand it, your reason for doing so was to contrast this document, which is a confidential document, with the bid register, which is not.
Correct, I see.
That's explained in your email to the Commission at page 65. You have that?
Yes, it's the link that I've attached.
And then on page 67, you attach what is the bid register, a tender bid register for TMPD 3 of 24-25.
That's correct, I see.
Is there anything that you would like to highlight about these documents beyond what we've just gone through?
No, I'll do so. I think during cross-examination, SCI can do so to indicate that these were not confidential documents as it was alleged, that they are confidential documents.
We'll get to that in due course. Thanks. Now, I'm not sure, I haven't seen the latest document that you have submitted. If you just bear with me for 1 minute, I'm not sure if the commissioners have received a copy. Can I ask that we deal with that document after the tea break so that we can...
We can do so, SC.
Just briefly, if you can describe to me what that document is so that I know what I'm looking for and how to understand it.
SC, it's an email that relates to HR matters. Remember, there are HR issues that are here, so it's an email that relates to...
Thank you. We'll have a copy made in the tea adjournment and circulate.
Correct, SC.
Then, if we can then start to the questioning proper, and I just needed to clarify a few issues arising out of your statement, which is in file 1. And file 1 essentially has 2 paginated series of documents. The first set of pagination relates to the 2 statements that you've given, and then it goes back to 1 for the annexures. So if I'm going to refer you to an annexure, I'll say annexure page 1, but it will still be file 1. And what I wanted to clarify first of all is what your job entails in the Tshwane Municipal Police Department. It's an issue that you deal with on page 9 of file 1 in your statement, and then you refer also to an organogram at page 155 of the annexure bundle, also in file 1. So can I take you to I'll just read what you say in page 45, and then maybe if you can explain it in more detail with reference to the organogram. 45, you say, my subordinate sections in the support and administration division include Administration Bureau, Police Logistics Support, Internal Affairs, Management Administration Support, and Ceremonial and Employee Wellness. And then you refer to an annexure listed under paragraph 45 above, which is an organogram, and that appears from page 155 of the annexure bundle. So can we go to that organogram? And probably it's best to start at page 156, where there is a high-level description of the 4 departments that fall under you, the 4 sub-departments, directorates that fall under you.
What's the file number of the...
Same file.
Same file.
But there are 2 sets of, there are 2 paginated halves of that file.
You said page
156.
156, thank you.
And there we see those 4 directorates: Management and Administrative Support, Police Logistics Support, Administration Bureau, and Internal Affairs. And very briefly, can you just describe to me what each of these directorates is responsible for? I'm not looking for much detail, but just broadly.
Thanks, SC. I think I've done it previously when I was reading my statement to the commissioners on pertinent matters that affect this commission, but I'll do it again briefly for you. When we come to management and admin support, that's MAS, and that's where it deals, with issues of finance, issues of HR, issues of, OHS, issues, of performance management and so forth. In brief, that's where they deal with. Project management, as I indicated, they deal with issues of contract management, assisting divisions with bid specifications, with issues of ensuring that, tenders get advertised. As soon as they are awarded, then they draft, SLA. assisting various divisions to ensure that SLAs are in place in order to assist them in accounts payable, that SLA should be in place, loaded on SAP, contracts are in place, loaded in SAP, so that when payments get done, they can be sure that there's a contract for such a payment and so forth. And also, at the beginning of the financial year, you could have picked it up that, if you are not in the city, you might not specifically, you might confuse the processes. Like when the CFO was here, he outlined the question of from receiving an invoice, creating, POs and so forth. He started it on the second step, which created an assumption that in the city of Tshwane, you work before a PO gets generated, while it's not the case, because each and every financial year, at the beginning of the financial year, the finance section accounts payable, once the budget gets loaded, they create requisitions, they create POs.
Not made any mistake as far as the custody chain or the handling of the exhibits or serial numbers contained. The court finds him and all the above then as stated credible, reliable and truthful. The extent to which the court had been impressed by Colonel Ngwadleka was further evident from the finding that he meets the criteria, in fact exceeds the required criteria in his thoroughness, and he can be, or is mentioned by this court to be not only an expert witness but a super qualified expert witness. That is the conclusion regarding Colonel Ngwadleka. This evaluation was in turn projected by the court to the rest of the state witnesses, even though there was no factual basis to do so. This in itself indicates a material misdirection by the court in its approach to the evidence of the state witnesses and the assessment of their credibility. In contradistinction, the court held that the defense witnesses, including Mr. de Klerk, were defensive and at stages argumentative. This is further borne out by the comparative analysis by the court of the evidence of Mr. de Klerk as compared to Colonel Ngwadleka, which was found to fall short and only be noted as mediocre. This biased approach to the testimony of the defense witnesses is further illustrated by the approach adopted towards the accused. The fact that he had stated that Mr. Mavundla should have been charged was utilized to discredit him. Additionally, he was found to have evaded many questions that had warranted a reply, and the court held that it became evident that the replies were entertaining, but however the pertinent questions asked remained unanswered. He was further criticized for relying upon the viral footage whereas nobody else was. Having held that the court had to establish whether the version presented by the defense was reasonably possibly true, regard was had to the statement in cross-examination that the firearm had been in Gauteng. In this regard, the court held, and I quote, "Now as to what happened and where it was kept, no explanation was provided. It begs the question, dealing with circumstantial evidence, that what does the firearm being booked out to Mr. Mavundla in effect equate to that specific firearm is booked out to him for whenever it is needed for him or by him. Since clearly it does not mean it needs to be on his body since he left it in Gauteng. In doing so, the court appears to have lost sight of the fact that this statement had been made by the co-accused counsel in cross-examination. There was no basis to be reasonably possibly true." Then we say this misapplication of the onus is further evident from the court having in its concluding remarks confirmed the two cardinal rules that require the inference sought to be drawn to be consistent with all the proved facts and to exclusion of every reasonable inference from them, save the one sought to be drawn. This could never be the case in the absence of any objective corroboration that one would have expected to be present at the scene, such as damage to property, injury to people, or at the very least an expression of fear by anybody from the many people that have been in attendance at the celebration. And finally, in relation to the conviction, Your Worship, what he says, at the very least, it cannot be said that now the court might find differently or have a different assessment of all the evidence led in this trial. Consequently, it is respectfully submitted that the accused is not only a reasonable, but a good prospect of success on appeal, and this application for leave to appeal against the convictions ought to be granted. In relation to sentence, Your Worship, we submit the following. Say that the sentence imposed by this Honourable Court is startlingly inappropriate to the extent that it induces a sense of shock. We say further, due regard being had to the prevailing circumstance at the time of the commission of the offences and more specifically that they all relate to the same event in a very limited period of time that did not exceed 1 minute, all of the counts ought to have been taken as one for the purpose of sentence. There is no need or basis to impose separate sentences in respect of each charge, as this court did. We say further, insufficient regard was had to the personal circumstances of the accused. Most significantly, he is a 45-year-old first offender who was 37 years old when these offences were committed. He has not been convicted of any other offences in the interim. Additionally, he is married. He has 3 children and a wife to support. He is in full-time employment. He is also involved in community projects and regarded as an asset to the community. There is no basis to contend that he is a danger to society, thus ought to be removed from society. In this regard, Your Worship, I wish to highlight that no regard is had to the fact that he has led a blameless life during the duration of this trial, and that he hasn't committed any other offence, and this is not taken into account in the sentence that was imposed. Furthermore, when it came to his community project, Your Worship questioned the social worker who testified, Ms. Thompson, in relation to the soup kitchen under a question to clarify, and it follows, Your Worship, just to indicate the approach of Your Worship. It's at page 163 of the record. Your Worship says at line 16. Okay, let me leave that. I have only 2 aspects left, no few in fact, because if I had it before the time, it may have been a different story. The other issue, not an issue, but if you can explain. I think we're going in a circle of a radius of 5 kilometers on each side of the court building. We're going to find about 4, 5, 6 soup kitchens. So, and this soup kitchen is specifically to the area Mr. Malone is coming from. Ms. Thompson says, correct, Your Worship. The court says, so that is, what value must the court attach to that? Because I read it is from donations. Ms. Thompson says, part of, yes. And through the facilitation of the involvement of the accused, Your Worship, so Your Worship says, say it will continue. She says, it will continue most likely, yes. Court says, okay, so there's nothing special about the soup kitchen. Ms. Thompson says, there is. Then Your Worship cuts her. Then Your Worship says, except that he may want to be very thankful that people are being served a meal that is outstanding. Ms. Thompson says, yes, Your Worship, and it was mentioned as part of the consideration in terms of the risk of reoffence. So the point we're making, Your Worship, is Your Worship undermined with respect the role that the accused makes to society. Put quite differently, Your Worship, neither, to my knowledge, does Your Worship or anybody else in this court have the right to claim that they started or initiated a soup kitchen, but Your Worship belittled that approach by saying there's so many of them, they don't need him, whereas it was he who initiated it. So I needed to make that point. Turning to a more detailed list of what Your Worship had dealt with today. At the outset, Your Worship foresaw an application for leave to appeal. And Your Worship said, as to the firearm received from TSS, I dealt with this in my judgment. It will be an aspect for leave to appeal in the merits. There's no such finality in my judgment. This will rest until the leave to appeal. So it's quite clear with respect, Your Worship, that you envisaged that there would be an application for leave to appeal, and that, with respect, permeated your judgment on sentence. When it comes to aggravating circumstances, Your Worship, you said that Advocate Sees had highlighted and submitted that a custodial sentence was a normal, or was the right sentence, because this was a deliberate and executed with precision. And once again, Your Worship said these merits will be dealt with when we reach that point. So what we submit, Your Worship, is it was always envisaged by Your Worship that there would be an application for leave to appeal, and that this sentence bears that out. Your Worship also dealt with the accused being in a position of trust. Now, when we refer to a position of trust, Your Worship, is ordinarily a person who's an employee who looks after money or an assets on behalf of somebody else. It doesn't cover the situation dealt with in this matter. And we've never ever argued that there's an absence of accountability and a breach of trust. But all of this, Your Worship, will come to the final quote that I'll address, Your Worship, on before I make my conclusion. And that's to the effect that Madam Justice is meant to be blind and deaf, Your Worship, not have regard to the actual specifics of the person when when sentencing in the manner that Your Worship did so here. Now, Your Worship also asked the following in your sentence. You said, the event was planned, the accused said so. I stand corrected on this aspect. It is the fifth celebration, first of its kind, and I was told that it is a well-established tradition. She said, Your Worship said, I'm unsure about this. Now, Your Worship could have clarified that. The evidence was there, but to do so in your sentence, you say is a misdirection. Your Worship went further to say it was planned, the whole event was planned and ended up in offences being committed. That can't be true. Now, with respect, we say it's a self-defeating argument, because if one says it was planned, then one must take into account that having been planned, there were no injuries, there were no damages, nothing untoward happened to anybody, nobody expressed any fear. But that doesn't find any place in Your Worship's judgment on sentence with respect. And Your Worship then referred to the term of celebratory shots as an instance of sugarcoating, nothing more, nothing less. And we say in that regard, Your Worship erred, because it's Your Worship's finding as well, as part of Your Worship's questioning of Ms. Thompson, that if it's my birthday, can I go down the street and start shooting? And she said no. You said, well, aren't those celebratory shots? So the court knew all along that it was dealing with the celebratory shots.
For instance, we have a uniform tender. They'll create POs at the beginning of the financial year. Give to company B to say we need 500 trousers or 1,000 trousers. Company B September comes and say we can only produce 500. They deliver 500 trousers, they deliver an invoice. Then you start now, create a requisition again, you create a PO for the quantities that have been delivered. You have a PO already for the entire financial year. I've given an example with South African Post Office to say, we don't know how many infringement notices will be issued. So we create a PO for the entire year that debit against that PO as we receive an invoice. So you can't work in the city without a purchase order. But the CFO started it in the middle when they are going to pay. So it creates an impression as if you start by working, giving an invoice, then we create a PO. So I just wanted...
I appreciate that clarification, because I also was quite confused by what the CFO said in that regard, because he seemed to be suggesting that the PO only gets issued after the work is done. And that's incorrect, is it not?
No, he started the process when, work has been delivered, they come with an invoice. I'm giving an example with the uniform.
Yes.
You create a PO for 1,000 trousers to be delivered. The supplier can only manufacture 500. So when he comes and delivers 500, they certify the invoice again. So, and we create a requisition and a PO for 500. We pay that. But the PO has been created for the entire year on those aspects. So for South African Post Services, because our budget is segmented in quarters and so forth, we create for the entire year. As soon as we receive an invoice, because we're not sure how many infringement notices are they gonna post, what will be the cost of that? So as soon as they're posted, they are sure, we verify against what they've posted and the invoice. Then it start that process again. So it's twofold.
Can you explain that using the security contract?
Yes.
Just explain it so that we understand.
The security contract, because we know it's a contract, there are figures in that contract on a monthly basis. We create, requisition and POs, same applies. But for instance, let me take for demolition, a supplier for red ends. He demolishes shacks as and when there are invasions and so forth. We're not aware how many shacks will be demolished. Same applies, we create POs for the entire period. So it works against, it debit against those POs. So as soon as we receive an invoice, we do a requisition again, we do a PO of the exact figure of an invoice that will debit against that.
So in a sense, the PO is upfront,
It's upfront.
and that's not what the CFO said, and that's what we tried to contradict him on. In fact, yesterday, one of Major Phiri's annexures also contradicted what the CFO said. I think it was the very last bullet of that annexure. Unfortunately, I don't remember which one it was. Do you perhaps remember, Mr. Musigidi? But do you remember the annexure I'm referring to? Pity we can't identify it, but we did not raise it specifically with Major Phiri. It didn't really concern his testimony. But going through it, we actually saw it, and all three of us, and we saw that it also contradicted what the Chief Financial Officer had said. Yes, Mr. Shaskalsi.
I think perhaps Commissioner to indicate to say the CFO might not be is correct. He only started the process on the second phase. It's upon the duty of each and every departmental head to ensure that, at the beginning of financial year, POs get generated before work can be executed.
I think I may have to come to the defense of the CFO here, because it's not something I usually do. But I heard your explanation slightly differently, because you were describing in relation to the post office example, or even the ad hoc security example. There is a purchase order issued at the start of the financial year,
Yes,
based on what your budget for the whole.
Yes.
Sorry, at least it's not me.
My apologies, Commissioner. I thought I switched these phones off. Apologies. Yes.
No problem, Deputy Chief.
If it's any consolation, Deputy Chief, I've done that also. But so you, and let's take the ad hoc security services where there are a number of different service providers.
Yes.
You have a budget for the whole service. You have, say, 8 service providers. You estimate what. Do you then divide the budget by 8 for each of the service providers, or either you do that or you estimate which service provider is going to get which portion of the budget? But will you issue a purchase order for each service provider at the start of the financial year?
Let's go on the ad hoc services, SC. The tender, when it gets advertised, it advertised with 2 portions of, payments to say, what are your fixed rate per month, per guard, and so forth. So as soon as the contract gets awarded, it has got a fixed monthly figure of that particular service providers. Because ad hoc services, it's as and when required. These are not fixed services. They can come for 3 months, they can go as a need arises. So these are not fixed. And it's incumbent upon the assets protection services to say, as they receive a request from either electricity, from housing, or whoever, for additional guards, to say maybe we are busy upgrading a power station, will require additional guards. To say we'll need additional guards, they cost the guards, they require an invoice from the service provider to say how much, because already they have rates for a service provider to say, For so many guards, this will be the price they give to the service department to say, identify for us a GL account, which will be general to ensure that these payments get done, because it's not within, the Washman Services budget, because it's an annual budget. So we create purchase order for service providers for the duration of a year on the Washman Services. So those comes as additional. So they create, GL to ensure general of those, monies.
But when does the purchase order, the electricity, let's take an example. The electricity department says we are about to do some work at a substation. We're going to need ad hoc security for protection.
Yes.
We're going to need 2 guards 24 hours a day for 2 weeks.
Yes.
At that point, you designate one provider who you want to provide those guards.
Yes.
You already have fixed rates for those,
Yes.
so you know what it's going to cost.
Yes.
Is that the point at which the purchase order gets issued?
Then they designate a GL with a figure to accounts payable, finance department hours, then they create a PO in that regard.
But it happens before you actually deploy the guards
It should
to site. It should happen before you deploy to
guards
site.
get deployed, yes.
Right. And then, so what needs to happen is you identify the GL, the place on the general ledger that
Yes.
provides for this.
Yes.
Once you're satisfied that there is provision for it in the general ledger, you issue a purchase order.
Yes.
You know what the numbers are going to be because you've already got a contract that says 24,000 rands per week or whatever.
Correct.
You issue the purchase order. They then provide the services on site pursuant to the purchase order and the deployment order. And once they've provided the services, they invoice you.
Yes.
But by the time the invoice comes in, there should be a purchase order that covers it.
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Diversion, but it was something that we did need to clarify. If we go back to your organogram,
Yes.
you're talking about one, and maybe the best place to go to is page 157, where you give us a fairly detailed description of the one of the 4 directorates underneath you, the management and administrative support.
May this please be projected and expanded? One 157 or 156 for a few seconds.
And blow it up. So if we go to 156, we see you have 4 different directorates underneath you. The one that we've been looking at is management and admin support.
Yes.
There are 3 others: policing, logistics support, administration bureau, and internal affairs.
Correct, I see.
You have described both in your statement and in the organogram on page 157 and also in the previous hearing management and administrative support. Can you very briefly describe what Policing Logistics Support, Administration Bureau and Internal Affairs deal with?
Policing logistics deal with the fleet management of the department, and they also deal with issues of, it's logistics of the department, uniform, fleet, which is, vehicles, building maintenance, and all equipment, IT, and so forth. So they deal with those aspects, of assisting, the department in ensuring that their IT gets set and so forth. They also deal with issues, of, ensuring that assets management, to ensure that, assets get managed accordingly. As you know, that we should ensure that, all assets get registered and they are managed accordingly.
And Administration Bureau?
Administration Bureau deals, with issue of, infringement, capturing of infringement notices. As the divisions go out to issue notices, it's upon this division to ensure that, they capture notices, they are posted on e-notice, they liaise, with, RTMC in ensuring that, all the infringement are posted. They liaise with SAPO in terms of receiving invoices and payment of such.
Sorry, SAPO.
South African Post Office, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, South African Post Office. So they deal with that also. They deal with issues of, ensuring that they follow up in issuing executions of warrants of arrest and so forth. So that's the section basically that deals with that.
And Internal Affairs?
Internal Affairs deals with issues of, investigation of, departmental loss. If members are involved in accident, they need to investigate if the member was at fault or what. Damage and loss control, they deal with issues of, issues liaise with legals on litigations, and also issues of conduct within the department.
Thank you. So I certainly, you've clarified for me what I needed to understand. Moving forward, unless the commissioners have any other questions in relation to job description, I'm going to move to another area of your statement.